Why do React hooks make terrible comedians? Because they always get caught in an infinite loop of jokes. If you don't get that joke, neither do I. If you do understand it, good job. Nobody cared. But this video isn't about jokes. It's about hooks and how you can use them.
Learning about these hooks will definitely help you get better as a React developer.
By the end of the video, you'll be the best hooker.
By the end of the video, you'll be able to understand most of the hooks you will use in your project.
This video will be useful for anyone who uses React, which means you, your dog, your grandma, I don't know, anyone who uses React basically.
With that said, let's get started with our first hook, useState. The useState hook is a very common hook you'll find using for basically all of your React projects. It is not a hard hook to learn even if you're a beginner. To see how it works, I have a React component here and I will make a new const called counter and then use the useState function from React. This function accepts a default value. Here I'm going to pass in 0. It is also better to deconstruct your variable to a value name and a set function for your value. You can get the state by using the name, and the set function allows you to change the value. I will create a new button to change the state by using the set function. The UI will re-render whenever the state changes using the set function. Now, that was quite simple, but another important and common hook is the useEffect.
It is confusing for beginners to understand this hook.
The useEffect hook allows you to manage the lifecycle of a component. By default, the useEffect function accepts a callback function, and this function runs whenever the UI re-renders. I have a console log here, and as you can see, when I click the button, because the UI is re-rendering, the function runs. You can use the useEffect hook to only run at the beginning or when the component is mounted by passing in empty square brackets. As you can see, the same console log only runs once. You can also pass in values to the square brackets. That way the UI will re-render only when the values depend on change. The useEffect hook can be used to run a function when the component is destroyed by returning a function with the useEffect hook. The useEffect hook is hard to understand in the beginning, but it is an important hook to learn. Another hook you might consider using is the useContext hook. It allows you to pass in data from a parent component without passing them as props. First, you need to create the context using the createContext function, and then you can use the context provider to pass in the value to the child components, and then use the useContext hook to get the value. This is better than passing them as props. However, you should not use this frequently. It is recommended to use a state management library instead if you want to pass in multiple data frequently. Next, we'll talk about useRef hook. This hook allows you to create mutable objects that persist across renders. This hook is similar to useState hook, but unlike the useState hook, this hook doesn't re-render whenever the value changes. You can access the value by calling .current, but this doesn't re-render the DOM when we change. A common use case for useRef hook is to get the reference to a DOM element. You can set the initial value to null and then pass in the ref attribute. You can now use this to manipulate the DOM, like programmatically changing the background color like how I did it here. You might find a use case for caching the result of a function, in which case you can use the useMemo hook. The useMemo hook in React is used to memorize the results of a function so that it only gets recalculated when the dependencies you depend on change. This can help you save some performance in your React application. But sometimes you may need to cache an entire function, in which case you can use the useCallback hook. This hook is like the useMemo hook but for functions. So now the function runs only when the dependencies you depend on change. An interesting hook to learn is the useRefucer hook. It is used for managing state like useState hook, but in a different way. The useRefucer function returns the state, but also a dispatch function to modify the state. The dispatch function takes an action, and an action by convention is an object with a type which can be any string you want, and other optional arguments you may require. When a dispatch function is called, it will trigger the reducer function, which you need to pass in as argument. You can use the function to get the current state and also the action. You can now use something like a switch statement to change the state. The useRefucer function also takes an initial value as its second argument. There is a lot more code than if you were to use useState. The reason to use useRefucer is that it is more robust and easy to scale, but people do have mixed opinions on this. There's also a state management library called Redux which uses this pair. A hook that you might use rarely is the useLayoutEffect. It is similar to useEffect hook, but the only one difference, it runs right after the components are rendered but before its subsequent visual updates. It can be useful for doing things like measuring the DOM elements. Custom hooks in React can be created to combine multiple hooks and also to make your code more readable and reusable. You can create a custom hook by just creating a normal JavaScript function. By convention, you are recommended to start the name of the hook with use. Next, you can use your hooks, and finally, you need to return a value for the hook. You can also use the useDebugValue hook to make a custom label when you view your component from the React Dev Tools. This hook can be useful for making your custom hooks. These are 10 React hooks to use in React. These are the most common hooks you'll probably use in a React application. I hope that this video was helpful for you, and if so, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.